mic's not heard on YouTube. How about now? The mic should be good now. All right, we didn't have a mic for a minute on YouTube. I didn't even notice it. Thanks for letting me know, Carlina. So I've talked about this many times. That is like the story of the boy who cried wolf. All y'all know that story, right? So there was a boy whose very job was to let everybody know if a wolf showed up, then all the people in town would come around to protect the sheep. They would scare away the wolf or get rid of the wolf so the wolf couldn't attack all the sheep. And the little boy, knowing this, one time he cried out wolf, even though there was no wolf. Everybody in town dropped everything they were doing and ran to go and get the wolf. There was no wolf, and the little boy laughed at him because he had played a practical joke. Then he did it a second time, and everybody ran to go get rid of the wolf, and he laughed again because he had played a practical joke. And everybody knows the saying: fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So all the people resolved, okay, next time this boy cries wolf, we're not going to go running after it because we know that this boy is just a prankster. He's going to say that just to get us to come running to play a joke. So the next time he cried wolf, there was an actual wolf, but nobody showed up. And since there was an actual wolf, the wolf went and caught a couple sheep, and the boy now was in bad shape because the one time he actually cried wolf and there was a real wolf, nobody wanted to pay attention because he had already fooled them a few times. This is what happens when race hustlers play the race card too often, that we stop paying attention to anything that might be real racism. Is because you overplayed the card. You're calling everything racism. You're making everything about race and making everything about your skin color. You are frontlining your skin color, that when something comes up that actually should focus on skin color, nobody wants to hear it because they're fatigued from hearing your nonsense over and over again every single day. And again, this is not a new argument, at least not coming from me. But on the other side, people say, the race hustlers and the people who are not fatigued, they don't have black fatigue, they say, well, you risk diminishing legitimate racial issues by lumping all race-related discussion into one negative bucket. And to that, I say, I agree. However, how did this happen? How did it happen? If you're a race hustler or you're a black person listening to this right now and you don't like the concept of there being black fatigue, then I will say the following. What has happened that has allowed race-related discussion to be lumped into one negative bucket? It's the people who are taking everything that involves race and making it into a racial topic. Who did that? The race hustlers did that. And if you're supporting the race hustler, then you're supporting someone doing the thing that makes race-related topics have less relevance because of what you put out there. All right, that's exactly what you did. It dismisses legitimate racial issues. We end up, rather, dismissing what could be a legitimate racial issue because we've gotten so tired of the boy crying wolf that we're not going to listen to anything. We're not going to listen to anything that the boy says because he keeps crying wolf, and we know he's bullshitting us. We know he's lying, and we know he's doing it to draw attention to himself, not because there's an actual wolf. So people who are experiencing this black fatigue, let's just say a white person. Let's just use white people and black people here for sake of conversation, for brevity of words. When someone is feeling black fatigue, it is giving them a voice, finally, to let people know how they feel. If they feel that they have been unfairly labeled or silenced as racist just because they have a valid criticism of something that a black person has done or that black people are doing. And this is something I've been talking about since before 2020. And the summer of 2020 was a summer of racial justice. We know there are multiple things happening that summer. There was a Trump versus Biden campaign. You had the Breonna Taylor thing happen, and then you had the George Floyd thing happen, and then you had the whole summer of quote unquote mostly peaceful protests all through the cities of the United States of America. Before that, I was talking about this and telling, I did an episode on my show, probably around episode number 1300, something like that, where I said racism is legal. And it's still true. Racism is legal, folks. Racism is not a crime. If someone wants to be racist, they have a right to be racist. If someone wants to verbally express their racism, they have a right to verbally express their racism. You cannot call the cops on someone for being racist. There's no crime. All right. People can think whatever they want to think. And racism is a way of thinking, is not a behavior, by the way, by definition. But if somebody is racist, they got a right to be. This is not something to go screaming bloody murder over just because someone is racist or you think that they're racist. Because again, you can't prove racism. All right, racism is not a thing, is not a construct, is not a system. Despite what Ibram X. Kendi told you in his book, racism by definition is a thought or the belief in your mind that one race is superior to another just on the basis of the virtue of skin color. That's the definition of racism, the first definition of the term. Now, there are further definitions that people have created to expand what can be called racism. And this is the reason why we are where we are today, because the search for racism has expanded because more people have seen an opportunity to benefit from labeling something as racist. Because again, like the boy who cried wolf, it gets a whole bunch of people to pay attention if you're able to label something as racist and make it a race-based discussion rather than it being an action-based discussion. So if the discussion is just about you did something that wasn't good, now you got to deal with it. Like this situation in Texas where one teenager stabs another teenager over what essentially looks like a schoolyard argument. Now, if that had happened and race was not brought into the conversation, if it was two white kids or two black kids, nobody would give a damn and nobody would be talking about it. And I damn sure wouldn't know that it even happened. I wouldn't know if that happened at the high school down the street from where I live. But we all know about it because it was race related. We made it into a race related situation because you got the black people, you got some black people who are race hustlers trying to make it seem like they're trying to argue on one side of this conversation, not necessarily because of the merits of what happened, but because there's a black person on this side and a white person on that side. And there's a whole lot of people out there, black and white, who go and choose sides anytime it's a racially based, let's just call it debate or conflict. There are white people and black people who do this automatically without consciously thinking about it. But we're talking about black fatigue here today. And there are white people out there. And again, I've been saying this since like 2017. There are white people out there who are not allowed to say what they really want to say when the discussion is race-based. Why? Because if you say the wrong thing in front of the wrong audience, you're going to get immediately labeled racist. If you do it at work, you're going to get called into the HR office, and you might end up losing your job, losing your reputation, and losing a lot of friends of yours simply because you got labeled racist, not because you actually did anything that was wrong or racist. And white people have been, again, walking on these eggshells for several years now. And white people are finally, for whatever reason, they finally feel like they have license to speak up about this and say, you know what, I'm getting tired of this. And I understand it. I completely understand it. Because again, I've been calling out race hustles for a long time. This ain't new to me. I did not just start doing this. I didn't start doing it when it became popular or when everybody became comfortable saying it. I've been saying this for a long time. And being that I'm black, understand the foundation of what we do over here at my company is based in mindset. And one of the bases of our mindset work is accountability, personal accountability and personal ownership of your situation. Is the number one rule in the 12 work on your game commandments is personal accountability, taking full ownership of your situation, which means what? That even if something is not your fault, it is still your responsibility. So if you are black and you feel like it is harder to be black in the United States of America than it is to be white in the United States of America, then okay, it's not your fault that you were born black, but it is your responsibility that, okay, even if you think it's harder to be black, if you ain't leaving America, you still got to figure out how to be successful in America. That is still your responsibility. Even if you think it's harder, even if you think the white people have it easier. And on some levels, depending on the type of life you live in, the industries that you operate in, it is absolutely true that it's easier for a white person. I actually just wrote an article about this, didn't put it out yet, but it's going to be about this very thing. And again, something I've been talking about this for years. That for example, as a professional speaker, I see a whole bunch of mediocre white men on stages giving speeches. And I'm like, this guy's garbage. But this guy's getting booked over and over again to give speeches. Now, does the fact that he's white have something to do with that? I say, absolutely it does. I say, if I was that mediocre and I was a speaker, I wouldn't even have a career in speaking, let alone would I get booked. This guy's getting booked over and over again and he's trash. And does that have something to do with it? Absolutely it does. Now, is that an excuse? No, it's not. I say, okay, if I got to be 8 times or 10 times or 20 times better than this white guy to outpace him, then I guess I just got to be 8 or 10 or 20 times better than him. All right, that's it. That's the solution to the problem. The solution is not to make it equal. The solution is this is what I got to do. That's what full ownership looks like. That's what personal accountability looks like. That's what taking responsibility for your situation looks and sounds like. And there are black people who want to hear this, but there's also a lot of black people who don't want to hear it. And they get really upset and very reactive when I start talking like this. And I'm sure there are some listening to this here today. And when we get to the comments, which we will in about 37 minutes, we'll see what those people have to say. So continuing. Some say that this whole concept of black fatigue can be used as a shield to ignore or mock real concerns from black communities. It can be used as a shield to ignore or mock real concerns from black communities. Here's what I say to that. And we talked about this last week. I don't even remember what the topic was we were discussing. But in the black community, if there's a problem in the community, the number one thing the community needs to do is we need to look at each other. Because if there's a problem in our community, why are you looking to people who are not in the community to hear about it, listen to it, empathize with you, or do something about it? Why? It's happening in our community. Right? If something's happening in their community, they ain't looking at us and asking us to do anything. So why is something happening in our community? We're looking at them like they need to pay attention, care, empathize, or get involved. Why? Why do you need somebody else to get involved in your problems? Where I come from, the belief was, what happens in this house stays in this house. Right? Everybody's business ain't your business. And what's going on in your house is what you need to fix. And in our community, what's going on in our community is something that we need to fix. We were talking about black on black violence. That's what we were talking about. Black on black violence is not the white man's problem. That's the black man's problem. And the whole concept of, we shouldn't call it black on black violence, or call it whatever the hell you want to call it. There's a black dead body and a black person did it. What you want to call that? All right, give it a name, whatever name you want to give it. It needs to be addressed by black people. All right, nothing makes you go do that. And all of you listening here, all the excuses people come up with, oh, well, poverty. Okay. Any of you been broke before? Okay. Did you go take somebody's life because you were broke? No? Okay. And you say, what's the other thing people say? Oh, proximity. Oh, when you're around other people, then that's when the crime comes up. Okay. Do you live near people? You got neighbors? Okay. How many of them lives have you taken? All right. Since proximity is what leads to crime. Doesn't make any sense. And again, we talked about this last week. So if you didn't see that video, it's on my YouTube channel. You can see the replays on YouTube. And while I'm thinking about it, 1995 or 1996, Chris Rock had a special. Y'all remember this Chris Rock video? It was a bit as part of his bigger special where he talked about black people and N-words. So the title of this live stream was Black Fatigue, Tired of N-words. And I blanked out the N-word, but y'all know what I'm talking about. Black Fatigue, Tired of N-words. I remember that Chris Rock special from, again, you can find it on YouTube. So if you weren't alive back then or you're too young to remember, Chris Rock had a bit as part of his special, which was black people versus N-words. And Chris Rock said it. I love black people. I'm tired of N-words. And he goes on with several other jokes about it. He says, I'm bringing a big screen TV into my house. And they say some black people complain, well, it's just the media. The media makes it seem like black people are violent and black people are doing bad things to each other. It's the media that's causing this and making things seem worse than they actually are. And Chris Rock said, if I'm bringing a big screen TV into my house, I'm not looking around for the media. I'm looking around for N-words. All right. Those are the people I'm worried about. I ain't worried about the media knowing I got a TV in my house. I'm worried about N-words knowing I got a TV in my house. He says N-words. He gives a whole bunch of jokes about it. Y'all can listen to him tell. He can tell the joke better than I can. Go look it up on YouTube. Just look up Chris Rock, black people, and you'll see the video. Probably the most famous skit Chris Rock ever did. Now, continuing. It highlights this whole concept of black fatigue. It highlights how this constant injection of race into every issue creates division and resentment. I agree with this one. That, again, the race hustler's job, this is the job of the race hustler. So the race hustler is not lamenting the fact that this is happening. The race hustler is doing exactly what they meant to do when this occurs. This is the job of the race hustler, is to keep everybody divided and arguing about race, even if the topic is not really about race. Again, black kid stabs a white kid at a high school event. Well, how is that about race? It's not about race. It's about one kid did something that he probably shouldn't have did, even if maybe he felt offended, maybe he felt pissed off, maybe he felt disrespected, whatever. Again, you can't do this level of retaliation to this level of provocation. And he may have even invited the provocation. But again, the fact that it's a black and white is the only reason that it became a story. If that had been white on white or black on black, nobody would care. If it's black on black, none of you black people would care. If it's white on white, most white people wouldn't care unless you happen to know the people involved. That's just what it is. So the race hustler's job is to take issues that involve race and get you excited just because of the races involved in the situation. That is literally their job, is to get you excited because there's a black person and a white person. So that situation with the father and the son. Son gets shot while running away from cops after he was he was suspected to be in a stolen car with 3 other individuals. He gets shot. And then the dad goes and takes the life of a different cop that had nothing to do with the situation. And because the cop was white and both cops, the shooting cop and the cop that ended up losing his life were both white, and the dad and his son were both black, now it becomes a racial situation. And the race hustlers jump on this. They pounce on this. Why? Because there's a whole segment of the black population who is looking for something like this to get excited about. This is the reason why it works. Race hustling works because of the population of black people who are looking for something that involves black against white to get themselves excited about. And the race hustler is benefiting throughout this entire process. And that's why race hustling is a great business to be in if you are of the character of which you would want to do something like this. I could do race hustling better than most race hustlers if I was that character of individual, but I'm not. So moving on. Some people say, those who are pushing against this concept of black fatigue say, this can embolden genuinely racist attitudes of hiding behind I'm tired of talking about race. This is a fair point. That what some black people and race hustlers will say is that if you have black fatigue and you don't want everything to be about race, and you say, I'm just tired of everything being about race, when something that actually is about race comes up, you can use that kind of blanket shield to avoid having to talk about the subject. This is something that anybody who's a DEI speaker or consultant, this is a huge leverage point that they use in order to get themselves on stages or in front of rooms or booked for consultancies and speaking gigs. Is this one right here. Is that there are a lot of companies out there. This is what a DEI speaking salesperson is. This is part of their pitch. They'll reach out to some company that's ran by white people and they'll say, hey, white people, you all can't just not talk about race. You can't ignore race. Race is a real thing and it needs to be discussed in the world that we're in today, especially in the corporate spaces. So you need somebody like me to come in and explain to you how you need to understand about race and why you need to talk about it and why every voice needs to be heard and why white people need to be quiet and listen to black people say it. And the white person says, damn it, you know what, you're right. Let me go hire you and pay you 10 grand to come in here and teach us about what we need to say, what we need to think, how we need to feel about race. Because us white people, we don't know as much as you do about being black in the United States of America. And boom, the DEI consultant just landed themselves another contract. All right, this is the way it works. I'm kind of being facetious, but I'm not joking with that's the way it's pitched, just like that. I was speaking at a conference a few years ago, and there was only 2 black speakers on the list of speakers. It was probably about, at that whole conference, maybe 10 speakers. Only 2 of us were black. I was one, and I was not talking about race. I was giving a speech. It's called Work on Your Game, applying the pro athlete mindset to business. And the other speaker was a DEI speaker. She was a DEI expert, I guess, and she was speaking. Now, this event, I will say this. I'm not going to say what company it was, but I will say that this event was run by a company that is corporate, and they are at the top of their companies is white people. All right, the head of their companies are all white people. White person booked me, who I had a relationship with. And they had 3 stages at the conference. So they had one big main stage, like when the CEO of the company came and talked, he was on the main stage. And then they had 2 other stages that were about half the size as the main room. And these were the 3 different rooms for the stage. So they had me on one of the side rooms. I should have been on the main stage because I was probably the best speaker at their whole event, including their CEO. No disrespect to the CEO if he sees this. But I should have been on the main stage. They had me on this main stage. They had me on the side stage. And that's fine. I hadn't spoken on that stage for them before. So maybe they were just testing me out. But then the DEI speaker, she was one of the closing speakers on the main stage of the conference. And I think she spoke either later in the day or the same day I spoke. I spoke like early in the morning. She spoke later in the afternoon. So I went in the main stage room to listen to her presentation and watch her speech. And this speech was hot garbage. This woman wasn't saying anything. She basically had a bunch of slides that it could have been templates from Canva. And she was basically pretty much reading off the slides and explaining all these DEI talking points, this cookie cutter DEI talking points to this audience of mostly white people. And all the white people had to sit there and dutifully, obediently listen to what she had to say. Why? Because as a corporate entity, they had to check the box of we had a DEI person come talk to us. That's why they did it. And I remember I'm standing in the back of the room. So when I'm in conferences oftentimes, I'll stand in the back of the room and I'm just observing the whole scene. And I'm standing in the back of the room while everybody else in the room, it's probably 1,000 people in there, are listening to her talk. And the CEO of the company, he walked by. Now, I had not seen him yet. He knew I was one of the speakers, but we hadn't actually met at that event yet. He walks by, we shake hands, and we small talk for a moment. And I didn't say this to him. I was thinking it, though, but I didn't say it. I'm looking at her speak and listening to her garbage speech and looking at him. And what I wanted to say to him was, okay, so y'all had to check a box by hiring her, right? Because that's the only reason she was there. Her speech was not good. There was nothing funny about it. There's nothing insightful. There's nothing intriguing. It was just garbage. And again, I'm saying that is my personal opinion. But there was nothing useful in that speech. Now, the whole point being, that there's a whole industry behind this. There's a whole industry behind. You can guilt white people, especially when they're corporate. You can guilt them into letting somebody like you come up there and speak. Now, this DEI wave is slowly dying down. So if you weren't able to get in and get your money while the getting was good, then I'm sorry, the well may be drying up. But there was a nice little run between about 2018, even earlier than that. There were people talking about diversity, equity, inclusion back in 2015, 2016. It's always been a concept, but it wasn't hot. It was hot from about 2018 to about 2020, maybe 23. From 2018 to about 2023, if you were in, you were able to eat really good at that time. Now, in 2025, and not so much. You might have to go get a job. But anyway, one of the things, another point for the people who do have the black fatigue, is this constant blame, constant guilt tripping, this moral superiority eventually breeds backlash. That's what black fatigue is. The black fatigue that people are feeling now is based on that. People are tired of this constant blaming everything on race, this constant guilt tripping. Oh, you're white. So actually, I'll give you another example of this guilt tripping. I was listening to a debate, what they called a debate. And it was somewhat of a debate. It was going in the right direction of a debate. So a lot of this shit you see on YouTube, one person versus 20 people, and they all sit around in the chairs and they run up to the chair to argue with the person for 2 minutes. That's not really, it is a debate, but is anything being learned there? No, that's all entertainment. That's nonsense. That's not real debate. There was a actual, somewhat of a debate. I think it was held in Canada, and they had Jordan Peterson on there, and they had Michael Eric Dyson was on there. And these are the two names that are necessary for me to tell the story because they were on opposing sides of this conversation. It was like 3 or 4 people on each side. So Jordan Peterson made some point, and he said what he had to say, answering the question. And there's a big audience there. And then Michael Eric Dyson, those of y'all know who he is. Y'all know who Jordan Peterson is, right? So he wrote 12 Rules for Life. And Michael Eric Dyson is a black guy who was a professor. Last time I checked, I believe he was working at Georgetown, but he may have moved somewhere else. But he's a black guy. And Michael Eric Dyson has been writing about and talking about race for a very long time. And they're probably around the same age. They're probably both in their 50s, maybe 60s. So Michael Eric Dyson is a race hustler. He happens to do it at the academic level. So he's not doing it as an entrepreneurial thing. He's doing it on the academic level. And there's a lot of race hustlers in the academic space. He doesn't work at a HBCU. He works at Georgetown. And at least the last I checked, he was at Georgetown. And Michael Eric Dyson, at one point, he and Jordan Peterson are disagreeing on a point. And Michael is saying what he's saying. And there's not really much substance, no meat on the bone of what he's saying. He's just kind of making this surface level point about race. Then Jordan Peterson pushes back on what Michael Eric Dyson said. And Jordan Peterson is a thoughtful individual. Now, whether you agree with his thoughts or not, we can't agree that he's a thoughtful guy. Again, you don't have to agree with his thoughts, but do I believe he has substance behind the things that he says? Yes, I do. You don't have to agree with the substance, but there is substance. Michael Eric Dyson, on the other hand, I don't believe this guy has a lot of substance. I believe he is, what's the word that I would use? He's described himself as verbose. He likes to use a lot of words. He'll use 10 words when he could have used 2. And he likes doing that. And he compliments himself on his verbosity. He'll be in the middle of talking and he'll give himself credit for how slick he is with words. He literally has done this. I've seen him do it over and over again. So he loves to hear the sound of his own voice. And he's often very close to the surface. But because he's very good with the verbiage, he can talk circles around an audience and have the audience feeling as if he's giving them substance when he's really not. And this is what he does. He's very good at this. And he probably does it very well when he's talking to a bunch of college kids because they don't have the verbal dexterity to outdo him or point out his bullshit. I can point it out. But at this debate with him and Jordan Peterson, this is an audience of some educated people. And you can hear the response of the audience when certain points get made. So Michael Eric Dyson is making this surface level point. Jordan Peterson pushes back with some actual substance against him. And here's what Michael Eric Dyson says to Jordan Peterson. You know what he said to him? He said, well, the reason you think that, Jordan, is because you're an angry white man. And the whole audience, you can hear the audience. They're like, oh, like, really? That's what you came up with, man? And Jordan Peterson is pushing back. And you can hear the audience. You can audibly hear the audience pushing back on this. Like, dude, come on. Don't come with that nonsense over here. Because this is like in Canada somewhere where in the audience, it wasn't specifically because it was in Canada, but the audience was like, come on, like, give us something else. I'm saying all that to say this, that this constant blaming, guilt tripping, and moral superiority that the race hustlers utilize on white people in any conversation that happens to involve race, this is what people are getting tired of. People are tired of this shit. You can't keep doing this Every time a situation comes up and you find yourself with nothing else to say, you kind of just default to making it about race. We can't do that over and over and over again. I give you another example that illustrates this. Is a more funny example. So this is back like 10, 12 years ago. So this is when the Miami Heat had LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, when they were going to the finals 4 years straight. And First Take, this is when it was still Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless. That was the best version of the show, when they had Stephen A. and Skip Bayless. And they did a live, sometimes they do the show live from a location when something's happening, like the Super Bowl or the playoffs. So it was the NBA Finals. They did the show live in South Beach. So it's Stephen A. and Skip Bayless, and then they had two guests, and they were people from South Florida. So they had DJ Khaled and they had Flo Rida. Y'all know DJ Khaled and Flo Rida? So the two of them are like guests appearing on First Take with Stephen A. and Skip. And DJ Khaled and Flo Rida don't know a damn thing about sports, and neither of these guys are very intelligent. Neither of these guys has much to offer in conversation about anything other than, I guess, making music. I don't want to hear them talk about anything else. But they got them talking about the Miami Heat. And y'all know this is all entertainment. And this is in South Beach. This is right at the Clevelander. So it's a huge crowd of people out there listening and cheering and all that stuff while these guys argue, professionally argue. So Flo Rida gets the conversation to come to him, and he is trying to make some flimsy point that makes no sense. And Skip Bayless, who is a professional arguer, he starts challenging Flo Rida on his point. And Flo Rida says something, Skip Bayless challenges him, and then Flo Rida tries to say something else, and Skip challenges him again, like, what are you saying? What's your point? And Flo Rida couldn't really answer the question, so he just starts singing. He starts going, oh, 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 oh. And the crowd, they all just start singing along with Flo Rida because he ain't making any sense whatsoever. He has nothing to say. But they got him up there on the dais trying to sound like he knows what he's talking about. He knows absolutely nothing. And it was funny. I laughed when I saw it because it was clear he didn't have anything to add to the conversation. And this is the same thing Michael Eric Dyson did. It's the same thing. Michael Eric Dyson doing the same thing Flo Rida did. Is just Michael Eric Dyson just turns to race when he runs out of material. And Flo Rida turns to singing when he runs out of material. They're doing the exact same. They do the exact same thing. So some people say, those who don't like the concept of black fatigue, they say, well, it might encourage people to stop engaging altogether on race-related topics, even when necessary. Well, you reap what you sow. One of the laws of energy, folks, is that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I think this is Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You put a certain energy out, you're going to get a certain energy back. So if you keep making everything about race to use it as an offensive weapon, as if you're a black person, you keep using race as an offensive weapon against white people, eventually they're going to come up with a defense for this offensive weapon. You ain't going to just keep getting hit on your head with the same weapon. You're going to figure out how to stop it. It's like if you're playing football and one team keeps running the same play over and over again, the defense is eventually going to adjust to that play, and you're going to have to run a different play because they're going to adjust and they're going to start stopping that move. You can't keep doing the same move over and over again. So you got to come up with something else. So black people keep using race on every subject, even if race is not involved. Eventually people are going to say, all right, I don't want to talk about race at all, even if it's necessary. And I get that there is some legitimacy to this point by a black person / race hustler. However, there's also legitimacy to the point that since you exploited race for everything that came up for years, now people are tired of it. All right, this is literally what black fatigue means. People are tired of this shit, and now they don't want to talk about it. All right, so you reap what you sow. Next, black fatigue, those who are experiencing it, this allows space to call out the double standards and how behavior is judged based on racial identity. And there are people who have been calling this out for years, including myself and many others who are even more prominent than I am. The thing is, it took a lot of balls to do this for several years. It took a lot of balls. It's becoming more and more allowable, let's say, for lack of a better term, because of this black fatigue, now more people are feeling more comfortable saying things who 3 years ago wouldn't have said a damn thing. They would have just stayed quiet. They would have sat there and listened quietly to the DEI speaker who came in as a consultant to preach to the white people about what they need to do when it comes to race relations in the United States of America. Nowadays, that DEI speaker might get shouted down from the stage. Shouted down by people in the audience while they're on the stage. Now people are more comfortable saying something. What happens with any concept like something like this is that at the beginning, you have a few people saying stuff, and there are a bunch of people who agree with them, but they have to agree very quietly. So when I bring things up like this, listen, there are people I know, there are white people in my audiences who agree with me, but they agree with me quietly because they can't agree with me out loud with these kind of things because these people work in corporations, they work at universities, they work in big organizations. You can't agree with something like this out loud and let people know you agree with it. You'll lose your job. You'll lose a lot of your professional connections. This can hurt your career to agree with these kind of things out loud. All that's happening now is that it's becoming more mainstream so that more people are allowed to say it out loud and get away with it. Whereas 5 years ago, you said this out loud, you might lose your whole career. Where now you can say it out loud and you can actually, it's starting to become more allowable to get away with it. That's what's happening. So people calling out this double standard, again, not new, just becoming more mainstream, more of the everyday person feeling comfortable enough to say these kind of things publicly, say it with your name on it, say it on your public profile with your actual name and your actual face on it. And the blowback is not nearly as strong. The risk is not nearly as high as it used to be. Next, those against the concept of Black fatigue say it can devolve into tone policing or invalidating someone's experience because they are too loud or too emotional on the topic. So number one, I agree with this. And number two, so what? So what? So if you're Black, you may be saying, just to help you understand what I'm saying here in context, is that claiming you have Black fatigue can lead to you tone policing another person or invalidating someone else's experience because they are being too loud, too emotional, and trying to make everything about race just too much, more than you're comfortable with. I say, yes, that is true, that people could do that if you're Black. They say, well, you're just trying to use your experience you're using it as a baton or this is called a baton, using it as a offensive weapon to stop other people from sharing certain opinions or saying certain things certain ways. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's occurring. When you keep using race this way, eventually people are going to get tired of this shit and they don't hear it anymore. What did you expect? Anything experienced too often, people get fatigue of it. Is this true? There's nothing you can experience in life over and over and over and over again and not get tired of it. There's nothing. No matter how great it seems from the outside looking in, anything experienced often enough, you eventually get used to it, you grow fatigued of it, and you might not want to do it anymore. Doesn't mean you have to stop doing it. For example, if you're an athlete, you may get tired of training, but you still got to train because it makes sense to keep training so that you can win in the competition. If you have a job, there are days you don't feel like going to work, but you still go to work because it's your responsibility to go to work. And if you're disciplined and professional, you show up and you do your job anyway, even on days you don't feel like doing your job. I wrote a whole book about that. It's called The Third Day. You can see it, that red book right there behind me. You can get a free copy of that by going to thirddaybook.com. One of my moderators, please post that in the comments and pin it for a minute so people can see it. thirddaybook.com. That's all spelled out. The point being here, folks, is that people get tired of this shit. As I said over and over again, I said this so many times. Chris Rock said this in 1996. I love Black people. I am tired of N-words. Tired of N-words. Go look up the video on YouTube. Again, I love Black people. Tired of N-words. All right, the video's on YouTube. Any of you can find it very easily. It probably got 50 million views. Is the most popular thing Chris Rock ever did. So people who are experiencing Black fatigue, they are empowered to now say, I'm not racist. I just disagree with you without being instantly shut down. This is where I believe, and I've said this many times, I said this back in like 2018, that a heterosexual white, especially a male, heterosexual white male in America could not say this for like 7 years. Actually, it's heterosexual white males in America who still can't say this safely. They'd be taking a big risk by saying this, and they're not sure what would happen. A heterosexual white man cannot publicly, in many instances, say, I'm not racist, Mr. or Mrs. Black person, making your race hustling point. I just disagree with what you're saying. You're trying to make this point and trying to make it about race. I'm a heterosexual white man. I just disagree with what you're saying. They could not say that. It was like emergency, don't say that for like 7 years straight. Now it's, again, relaxing a little bit. But if you work in academia, you can't say this in a meeting. Can you say this in a staff meeting working at a college? Can you say this at a staff meeting working in corporate? Can you say this if you're on a board of directors at a big company? You can't say these things out loud. Now, if you're an independent, platform owner with your own podcast or YouTube channel and you don't work for anybody, you can say whatever you want. All right. People like me and others who fit that description, we've been saying whatever we want for a long time. But The idea doesn't really take hold till the mainstream of people all pick up on it and say, you know what, that's actually true. That's actually a thing. So I'm not racist. I just disagree with what you're saying. And the fact is, that a white person who even they have to offer the preamble of I'm not racist just to say they disagree with you proves that we still ain't out the woods. We as people in general, meaning out the woods of making everything about race. And my prediction is that we'll never get out of these woods. We're going to be in this forever. This ain't going away. Making everything about race is not going away. It's just that it's going to be more comfortable for people who are not black to push back when a race hustler comes out with their bullshit. Because race hustlers are not going to stop, because the majority of race hustlers ain't good at anything else. So they have no other skills, and they're stuck where they are. And we're not talking about people who are 26. These people are in their 30s, 40s, 50s. They ain't got nothing else to do. They have no other professional skills. They're old dogs who ain't trying to learn new tricks. They will continue to race hustle because they have no other option. So they're going to keep trying, and they will always have an audience amongst a certain segment of the black population. But race hustling doesn't become popular, or whatever the race hustler is talking about doesn't become popular until or unless they can get white people to buy into it, because there's way more white people than are black. So you can have a profitable career race hustling just talking to black people, but it ain't that great. You get the white people to buy in, now we talking. So they're going to keep trying, but it's going to become less and less, what word would I use here? Less and less fruitful for the race hustler. Let's just use that term. Next, couple more points here. It runs the risk, those who don't like this concept of black fatigue, runs the risk of turning legitimate conversations about systemic issues into personal annoyance. Yes, and so what? Again, this is my response to a bunch of things that the unfatigued black person may say. Yes, it's true that legitimate conversations about race and systemic issues, now people can just say, I'm annoyed by the subject, I don't want to talk about it anymore, and just shut you down and not want to talk to you. Could that happen? Yes. And my response to that happening is, so what? Again, every action equal and opposite reaction. There's a bunch of white Americans who had to sit here for the last 5 to 10 years, and they were not allowed to say anything when black people just wanted to go off about race and about white people and about the system and about our history and how hard it is to be black in America. They had to sit there and take that shit for the last 5 to 10 years. And now they're saying, I don't want to hear this shit anymore. And again, what do you got to say to that? Now, some black people may say, well, black people had to take slavery for longer than 5 to 10 years. My response to that is true. And how many years were you a slave? We're not talking about black people. We're talking about you. How many years of slavery did you do? You run your resume. You didn't do any slavery. So I don't want to hear the slavery fallback. A lot of black people like to use slavery as a fallback. Oh, well, we were slaves all this time. Well, we as a people, yes, but you personally and I personally, we weren't slaves of anything. You ain't no slave. How long were you a slave? So don't use slavery as a fallback, or use what white people did in slavery as a fallback against them. This is what happens. Again, have any of you seen this? They use it as an offensive weapon. So you are white, which means you are inherently racist because your ancestors enslaved my ancestors. So just going off that, we both got birthrights to victimhood, and you are a bad person. This is nonsense. And if you're white, you need to develop first of all, the verbal skills to call them out on their bullshit. And secondly, have the balls to stand on it when you get pushback, because you will get pushback. You'll get pushback to your pushback. Even today, you're going to get pushback to your pushback. And there's not too many white people who are willing to say these things out loud. And there's a few of them who are saying these things out loud. They don't say them exactly the way that I would say them, but I respect the fact they have the balls to say it. Doesn't mean I agree with everything that they say. So you take somebody like Tim Pool has been a little bit on this. Nick Fuentes, I don't know how y'all feel about him. I've heard him a few times, and I damn sure don't agree with everything he says. But he does have the balls to say things that a lot of people are thinking, but they won't say. And that's what I give him credit for. And there's several people who I put in that category. Charlie Kirk's in that category. Candace Owens in that category. Jason Whitlock's in that category. Nick Fuentes in that category. And Tim Pool's in that category. And there are several others whose names I'm not even thinking of right now. But there are a bunch of them. And again, every name that I just said does not mean I agree with everything these people said. I don't know if there's any human on the planet with which I agree with everything that they say. However, I do respect when someone has the balls to say something that I know a lot of people are thinking, but they don't want to say it. And then that person comes out and says it. I respect that. Even if I don't agree with what you said, I respect the fact that you are willing to say it when a lot of people these days are just unwilling to say things because they don't want to offend anybody. I don't mind offending people, so I say whatever the hell I want to say. So next, couple more points here. Those are black fatigue. It exposes the manipulation some use by hiding behind identity instead of engaging in real debate and real conversation. Again, this is exactly what a race hustler does. A race hustler's entire job is to make everything about identity and play identity politics and play the race card, and then engage black people into buying into this same concept. That's the main thing, is that they engage other black people into believing this, buying into it, and doing the same thing. So they're giving little breadcrumbs to black people of how to race hustle themselves by just listening to the race hustle. You listen to them enough, you're going to start talking like them. Now you're going to start thinking like them, and you'll start behaving exactly as they behave, which is what they want you to do. Because then you got to keep coming back to them. You got to keep coming back to the well so you can get more water. So this could unintentionally, some say, promote racial apathy or numbness to ongoing inequality. Yes, it not even potentially, it will, and it does, and is already doing it. And again, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Newton's law. I'm gonna do a whole episode. Actually, I think I already did. I did a whole episode on Newton's 3 laws of motion, and I think this is one of Newton's laws, but I may be misquoting. It might be just one of the laws of energy. But let me see if I can find that point where I said it, because I want y'all to understand this. It was a few days ago. I recorded this episode. It didn't come out yet, but it'll be on my podcast. I got a podcast that comes out every single day. It's called Work on Your Game. You can find it on Apple or Spotify. And let me see where it is. Newton's 3 laws of motion. So the law of inertia is law number 1. Force equals mass times acceleration is law number 2. And law number 3 is the law of action and reaction. Yes, so this is Sir Isaac Newton's 3 laws of motion. Third law of motion is that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So all of this stuff that the race hustlers and their disciples have been doing for the last 5 to 10 years, the chickens are coming home to roost, to paraphrase Malcolm X. All right, that's what's happening. And the last thing, this forces a conversation about accountability being more important than identity. There it is right there. This forces a conversation about accountability being more important than identity. And we're not quite there yet. And I don't know if we'll ever get there, but the door is open now. The door is open for somebody to at least make that statement in the room right now. Are we ever going to get to the point where accountability matters more than identity? The answer is hell no. That's not going to happen. That will not happen. Martin Luther King gave a speech called I Have a Dream. All of you heard of Martin Luther King. You heard of I Have a Dream speech, right? There was a part of that speech where Martin Luther King said the following. I have a dream, I'm paraphrasing him, that one day people will be judged by, not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Remember Martin Luther King saying that? Well, we don't remember, but he said that, right? Martin Luther King is still dreaming, because that ain't happening. People will be not be judged by the content of their character. People will be judged by the color of their skin. Why is this? Because human beings judge books by their covers. We judge things on the surface. We do not go into depth on things. We are not interested in context. We want the short, quick thing that satisfies our flesh and satisfies our emotions. We do not want to be engaged intellectually, because all that stuff requires time, attention, energy, and focus. Most people don't want to make those investments. This is the reason why most people, by definition, are average. This is why there's no way we will ever get to a point where, as a society, we judge people based on the content of their character as opposed to the color of their skin, because it's much easier to judge someone based on a surface trait than it is to go into depth and find out what's actually going on with the person, because that requires resources that most people are unwilling to invest. And that applies to everyone, black and white. So this whole concept of accountability being the main thing that we talk about rather than identity. Yes, there are people who will be about that. I'm one of the people who's about that. Accountability is one of the main focuses of what we do over here. And accountability means taking ownership, taking account of what you're doing, account of what you could have done, didn't do, need to do, and taking ownership of that before you point the finger at anybody else. Because I work with leaders. I work with business owners. I work with people who are in the number one position. And if you're that, you must take full accountability, because you can't hold anybody else accountable if you're not accountable. And using your identity as a crutch or as an excuse for your behavior is unacceptable. But again, I'm talking to 2% of people when I talk like this. I'm not talking to everybody. I'm talking to 2% of people who are open to this type of discussion. Most people are not open to this type of discussion because it forces them to take ownership of their shit. Most people don't want to take ownership of their shit. And if you offer them the lifeline of an excuse, they will gladly grab at it. And this applies to all races, black people as well. And I'm black, so I will call black people out more than I'm going to call white people out, just simply because I'm black. And if you offer black people the excuse, the lifeline excuse of using your race for why you are where you are, or why what has happened to you, then most black people more than half, will gladly grab at that excuse. This is the reason why race hustlers exist, because they have an audience. If there was no audience for race hustling, there'd be nobody doing it. If there was no demand, there'd be no supply. First law of economics is supply and demand. If no one is demanding a product, eventually you'll stop selling the product because nobody want it, or it'll just collect dust on the shelf. Race hustlers are popular because there are so many people buying what they're selling. Period. You don't have to like it. You may not like the girls sell their ass on the internet, but we cannot argue that nobody is buying it, because if nobody was buying it, they wouldn't be selling it. Same thing when it comes to cigarettes, same thing that comes to illicit pharmaceuticals, same thing that comes to anything else that you disagree with its existence. You not liking, or not even disagreeing with, but disliking the existence of a thing does not mean that that thing does not exist for a reason. It exists because somebody's buying. If everybody stops selling, there'd be nobody buying. All that said, ladies and gentlemen, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a quick restroom break. I do need to go to the restroom. This is going to take me 90 seconds. And I will play the Chris Rock skit, but I can't play the Chris Rock skit because it's probably copyrighted or something like that. They would. I don't know. Maybe I can get away with it. What do y'all think? Can I get away with playing the Chris Rock skit here, or are they going to tell me I'm playing copyrighted material? Give me a yes or no in the comments. If y'all think I can get away with playing the Chris Rock Black people versus N-words, give me a yes or a no in the comments, and I'll decide if I should play this or not. So this comes from a special that he did called "Bring the Pain" back in 1996. I say back in 1996. So a couple of you who are in here regularly said no. So I think I'm going to go with no. I'm not going to play this. But anyway, y'all can find it. I'm going to just show y'all what it looks like. Black people versus N-words is right here on YouTube. I'm not going to play this because it might give me a warning on TikTok. And I've already been suspended 11 times by TikTok in the last 10 months. So let me not tempt TikTok right now. We got to get back in TikTok's good graces. So what I will play, let me see if I can find something online that I can play that y'all can see. So right now, a lot of people talking about this Diddy trial, the Puff, I call him Puffy or Puff Daddy trial. I ain't talking about that yet because it's still very early in the case and ain't really that much to say about it yet because they still got to get to the cross examinations and everything else. So still a whole lot that needs to be said about it before we really have anything definitive to add. But I will be talking about the Puff Daddy / Diddy case in the future, but they still got to do cross examinations. I think yesterday was his girlfriend, Cassie, former girlfriend, Cassie. She was talking, and I do got a couple things I want to say about it. I'll tell y'all that in a minute, but I'm going to play this from my show. This is my show called Work on Your Game. It comes out every single day. Here it is. I can find it on Apple or Spotify. This is the Apple podcast version. And my latest episode, not my latest episode, I'm a couple episodes behind myself. I listen to my own show. And just to remind myself of what I said. 3278, everybody deserves a platform. So that's what this topic is. I'm going to let y'all hear a little bit of this while I run to the restroom. 90 seconds, I'll be right back. Then we're going to get into the Q&A. What is rationalization? It's a story that we make up in our own lives to make us feel better about things in our lives. And just because we tell ourselves a story that makes us feel good does not mean that story is true. Human beings, the easiest person to deceive is ourselves, the person in the mirror. And all of us have some lies that we continually hold in our head that allows us to go to sleep at night. Every human being does this. Now, some do more than others, but we all do. So when you get to a point that you don't want to hear anything that goes against the grain of what you've chosen to believe, now you are moving yourself closer and closer to being in an echo chamber or a bubble, if you will, where the only things you hear are the things that align with what you think. The problem with that is, again, you think a lot of bullshit. So you need to be exposed to people who think things differently from how you think and believe things different from what you believe, not necessarily because they're going to change your mind. Trying to change another human being's mind is an exercise in futility. I suggest none of you get into that business. However, open-minded, smart people should be open to hearing arguments that go against and contradict what you have chosen to believe, so that either A, you can choose to change your mind because you have new information, new perspectives, and new opinions, or B, you can be stronger in a position that you have because listening to what someone who is going against you has to say, you can push back and say, well, they said this, but what about this? What about this? What about this? You can defend your position against them in a mental exercise that you're having with this person while you're reading their book or listening to them being interviewed that allows you to get stronger in your own thinking. But if you're not willing to even have that engagement, then what are you saying about yourself? So there should be free speech and open discourse on any subject. I do not agree. I do not believe. And I'm not. All right. So that was a preview that any of you can get. I'm giving you a preview of something you can get for free. That is my show. It's called Work on Your Game. You can find it on Apple or Spotify. It comes out every single day. We got over 3,000 300 episodes of the show already. So you got a lot to catch up on. The show's been running since 2016, in case any of you didn't know, or you are new around here. So let me see. Starting in the comments over on YouTube, Bruce Grant said, if Black communities establish businesses that employ their own people, there will be no need for DEI initiatives. Well, Bruce, that already exists. But there are Black people who may want to work in places that are run by white people. And you can still get a job at a company that's run by white people even without DEI. Now, you don't need DEI to get a job at a white-owned company if you're Black. Bruce said, as Malcolm X suggested, rather than focus on gaining access to white-owned restaurants, Black leaders should channel that energy into teaching our communities how to start their own businesses. Now, I still agree. I generally agree with your overall point here, Bruce, which is about if Black people focused on building up their own communities or our own communities in ways that we'd be more empowered to not, quote unquote, need to access whatever the white people are doing. There is a strong argument for that. Directionally, I agree with you. There are several challenges to that. One is that there are not enough things being sold just by Black people for, let's say, someone like myself to get everything that I need. There's certain things I want to buy that ain't no black person selling it. So I'm going to go and spend my money with somebody who ain't Black. I don't have a problem with doing that, but I understand what you're saying directionally. And Malcolm X, before his pilgrimage, he was always talking about separation from the white man, not assimilation and not joining in, but actually completely separating. And then when he came back from his pilgrimage, he was talking way different, and he ended up losing his life. A lot of people in his own community stopped liking him because he came with that, what seemed to be a radical idea. When he came back and said, oh, all white people are not as terrible as I used to tell y'all that they were. But he had so much indoctrinated his audience to believing that when he came out with a different message, they didn't want to hear it. Interestingly enough. So we're now on TikTok, and let's see what we got in the comments here. I think I might be able to get through all the comments. Maybe. Let's see. I think I'm at the top of the comments, interestingly. So yeah, TikTok, I don't think they put me on a For You page here today. Maybe they did, maybe not. But I just came off I'm less than 24 hours away from what was a suspension. Not a suspension, excuse me, a permanent banning on TikTok. But as you can see, it wasn't that permanent. Traditional said, where are the Al Sharptons now? Oh, they still around. Al Sharpton's still around. Al Sharpton is still around. Ask an OG said, being the victim feels good. Sometimes. Bake Boss, good morning. Kuto said, all the constant hate is exhausting. What do you mean by hate? Yes, let's get the likes up, folks. Dally MAK, thank you for telling people. We're at 50,000 likes. That's great. Can we get to 100 in this next 53 or so minutes that we have here? Can we get to 100 likes? Is it likes? Yeah, can we get to 100 likes here today, folks? That would be great. Let's see how much time we got. I want to make sure we are good on time. All right. So we got 51 minutes and counting to get through all the comments. If we even need that much time, we may not need that much. Lahek says, Sunny Hostin is the epitome of race hustling. So Sunny's the woman on The View, right? Well, she is one good example. I don't think she's the epitome, though. No. If I had to give the crown to one person, it would have been Ibram X. Kendi, but he's kind of faded a little bit over the last couple of years. He got put into a position he wasn't ready for. Then I would say there's several race hustlers. There's so many of them that I would say Al Sharpton is still the godfather, who currently has the crown of race hustling. Who I would say there's several people out there, many contemporary folks who are actively doing it. Sunny Hostin has a big platform, so that's probably why she gets noticed. Joyless Reed, yeah, Joy Reed is a good race hustler. She's pretty effective at race hustling. ZD said 2020 was the summer of city fires. Yeah, it wasn't good because that was our towns. Banana Bones said, you don't have the right to assault them because of something they said. That's true. Bake Boss said ambulance chasers. Well, that's what's my man's name? Ben Crump. He's the ambulance chaser. He's great at it. He's great at it. Excuse me. Princess Living said, I'm Black and I'm tired too. Well, me too. That's the reason why I point out the Chris Rock skit. Chris Rock said this 30 years ago. I point out the Chris Rock thing because this is not new. It's not a new conversation. It's just that it just got repackaged and we got a new term for it. We call it Black fatigue. In the Black community, we've been talking about this. So when Chris Rock did that set on his show and he said Black people and N-words, a bunch of Black people laughed at that because we all talked about that internally already. We always were talking about that. We don't have a problem with Black people. We got a problem with N-words. That has always been a conversation in the black community. Asking OG said, white rappers probably feel this way. What I got to do? Princess said, we try talking to the community. They don't listen. Well, see, the thing is, in other communities, when someone of your own kind is not listening and they're not doing what you need them to do in the community, you kick them out. You don't accept them. You don't let them stay there. You kick them out of the community. And what happened in TikTok went back to the regular captures now, where you just got to slide the object across. They went to the easier one. So in other communities, when somebody's acting up and acting as if they don't have any sense, they get kicked out. They will kick their own people out of the community. Either you get with the program or you got to go. In the black community, when someone is behaving as if they don't know how to conduct themselves, we allow it, we accept it, and we even go on to celebrate it. George Floyd. How are there statues built for this man? I understand people were emotional about how it appeared he lost his life. But what was he doing when he was alive intentionally to uplift the community? The answer, he wasn't doing a damn thing. So we celebrate this guy. We're out on the street marching over him. What about people who are actually doing things intentionally to uplift the community? They get excommunicated or generally ignored. But the people who are offering us degeneracy, like our rappers and street guys and the George Floyds of the world, let's say the ones who are alive, we allow them, we accept them, and we even go on to celebrate them. No other community does this. No other community celebrates the degenerates. We do. So Kudo said, why do we have to be this community and that community? Why can't we be one people? Well, you're asking a very high level question here, Kuto, that if you can solve that, you will solve the crux of life and humanity. But people tend to silo themselves off into communities. It doesn't mean you can't integrate and work with other people, but yeah, communities do still matter. Princess said they end up taking the life of one, trying to change it, like Nipsey or Tupac. Well, first of all, let's not put Tupac in that trying to change. Tupac wasn't trying to change the damn thing. Do you see the video of what Tupac was doing the night that he lost his life? All right, Tupac was living exactly what he had tattooed on his belly. He was living the thug life. He was behaving like a thug. He was rapping like a thug. He was acting like a thug, and he died like a thug. He got exactly what he was asking for. Now, Nipsey Hussle. A lot of people say that about him. He was trying to change the community, and he had a business in the community, and he was neighborhood Nipsey, and he was just all around. Well, yes, you can say that he was trying to change the community. I wouldn't go as far as to say he was trying to change it. I wouldn't say that. I can't give that kind of credit to Nipsey Hussle. Say he was trying to change the community. Nipsey Hussle had a series of mixtapes that were literally called "Bullets Ain't Got No Name." He did several versions of it. He was, maybe you say on some level, he was trying to change it by being a businessman and an entrepreneur and all of that. Fine. At the same time, we can't just take the parts that we want to use with him and leave out the other parts. This dude was still rapping about being in the gang life and being violent and people losing their lives. He was still rapping about that. And his career was based on that material. His career wasn't based on, hey, let me uplift the community. No, his career was based on rapping about, he was a gangster rapper. So we can't just take the good part. And yeah, he lost his life the same way that he rapped. He was rapping about the kind of things that ended up taking his life. Asking OG said, Malcolm said this. Yes, true. Traditional said oppression. Hawk Talk said, define work. I have 50-point IQ weed on everyone I meet. Most of my time is spent translating grunts and slurs. I don't even know what that means. Princess Women said, it's not the media. No, it's not the media. Alfred Green said, 1,000% truth. Roland Martin, yeah, he's another race hustler. Some of them are just not that good because their race hustling is so shallow that you start to see through their nonsense. Lotech said, what's the job of a white supremacist? Well, first of all, name someone who is calling themselves a white supremacist. Not you accuse them, but they actually own the title. Name somebody. And I'll tell you what their job is if I know who they are. Princess said, in order to get someone excited about race bait, it must already be a race issue. Not necessarily. All you got to do is make it a race issue. So again, look at the situation with the black kid and the white kid in Texas. Black kid stabs the white kid over a schoolyard argument. How is that a race issue? It's not. It's just two kids arguing. And when people put it out there and framed it, when they framed it, people jumped on it because of the races involved. But that is not a race issue. It's just two kids arguing. Black kids and white kids argue all the time. Asking OG said, yeah, I take care of all my kids. Yes, exactly. I remember that. Yes, that was part of the skit too. That's why you got to watch the skit. It's only about 8 minutes long. Shot Caller Sports says, same with the NFL and Shador Sanders. Racism is marketable. What does Shador Sanders have to do with racism? Nothing about that situation had anything to do with race. That was about the way he showed up and carried himself, and the teams who had an option of choosing him chose him when they chose him based on not only his performance on the field, but also what they gauged as his attitude. That's not racism, though. If he's the number one pick, would it be racism? Courtney, good morning to you. Princess says, a black person, I'm tired of everything being about race. Well, get used to it. Carla, thank you for sharing a live with more than 10 people. Asking OG said, Shador was more about class than race. Who wants a wealthy? No, it wasn't about class either. It's about performance. The sports world is about performance. You could be a complete jerk, cocky as hell, and people can not like your personality, but if you're a good enough player, you'll get away with it. Many of you are probably not old enough to remember Shador Sanders' dad when he was playing. Shador Sanders' dad was more cocky, more out there, more peacocking, and more outspoken than his son is. Deion Sanders was more, everything you see in Shador Sanders, Deion Sanders was 10 times more of all of it. And Deion Sanders was in the NFL. Guess what number pick he was? Number 5 in the whole draft. Number 5. Go look up the picture of what he looked like on draft day. Deion Sanders. He was way more than what his son was doing. So any of you who think the Shador thing was about class or race, no, it wasn't. It was about performance. If he was a higher level performer, he would have got picked higher regardless of his attitude. Is that his performance didn't match his attitude. Or at least what people saw as his performance didn't match his attitude. Let me see if I can find that image. I know I saved it on my phone, but now I'm trying to figure out how to search for it. I don't know if there's a way to describe this image. This is just a guy with a bunch of jewelry on. Let me see if I can find that photo. Because I was showing y'all this a month ago. When was the NFL draft? About a month ago? I did a couple lives where we were talking about this very subject. So those of you who weren't around, you didn't see it. But I talked about this multiple times. And I'm trying to find a picture. I got it somewhere in my phone because I remember saving it and showing it to y'all when I did the live stream. But this whole idea of the Shador Sanders things happened because of racism, please. You can play good enough in sports, it don't matter. They can hate you. They can hate you. White people can hate you. You're a good enough player, they will pick you and they will pay you because you're going to help them win games and help them make money. This is a performance-based business. This is not a race-based business of professional sports. And again, look at his dad. Now, how do you explain Deion if you said they were mad at Shador? He got picked in the 5th round because of racism? No, sir. Where was the racism in 1988? I can't find a photo. Maybe I'll get to it later. Lahek said, race consultants have been exhaustingly used in educating teachers. I'm sure. Gina Queen said, I know you better not be MAGA. Well, first of all, Gina Queen, I don't take directives from anybody. Secondly, I'm not connected to any political movement. I have no political affiliation. I'm not on any side politically. Rotech said, when America sincerely acknowledges the issue, we'll quit talking about it. Well, that's a loaded statement because sincerely is judged by who? Who judges whether something has been acknowledged sincerely? And I think America has addressed race issues with the last 60 plus years of initiatives, bills, and policies initiated by the United States government. They've over acknowledged it. Now, if you don't think it's sincere, you don't think it's been acknowledged enough, that's fine. That's your personal opinion. But my opinion is opposite. Traditional said Dyson is a college professor, race hustler too. Yes, he is a race hustler. What is a 7.62? Gina Queen, I don't know what that means. Shot Caller Sports said, you lost me. Race and power are always the bottom line. Always the bottom line of what? Brian said, I've been singing song to roaches and the lights at the, I don't even know what that means. Holy Ghost said, that's the problem. Whatever you agree with has nothing to do with your job if you're outside of work. Whatever you agree with has nothing to do with your job if you're outside of work. Well, yes, it does. Depending on where you work, it very much has something to do with it. Now, if you work at Target, loading up boxes, yeah, maybe you can have whatever opinion you want outside of work and you can say it publicly and it won't matter. But if you work in the corporate office of Target, what you say outside of work absolutely does matter. So it depends on what kind of job you got. It depends on your status at that job, whether what you say matters or if it doesn't matter. So I'm still trying to find this Dion photo that I know I saved in my phone, but I just don't know how to search for it. How can I describe this photo? I don't know if I could describe it. Maybe I could find it on a different app. No. I can't find this damn photo. Let me look at my Google Photos. Maybe it'll be in there. Holy Ghost says you shouldn't lose your career when you're off the clock. You can, because first of all, most employment is at will, meaning you can be fired at any time or for any time for any reason or for no reason at all. And secondly, when you are hired by a company, you are a representative of the company. So you can't just do whatever you want to do. You're a representative of the company. So if they ain't feeling something that you did, you can be held accountable for that. So there's nothing wrong with that. I'm still trying to find this Dion photo that I can't find. I might not be able to find it. Asking OG said, I had to agree with the president on some things very quietly. Yeah, exactly. Al S says, do you think after enough of people speaking up, people may actually change their attitude or no? Some people will change their attitude. There's a small percentage of people, maybe about 5% of people, who are open to changing their minds about many things. Most people are not, but some people, yes. Some people will change their attitude about things. Traditional said, white folks making TikTok videos about it, they are tired. Yes, it's becoming more allowable to do it. Courtney said, can't pin still. I don't know why that's happening. Daniel Lee said, love the topic, need to drop for work. All right, Daniel Lee, thanks. Carla said that Chris Rock skit was hilarious. It was. Games Over Dim said, you're talking about race right now. Why don't you try changing the subject? Well, I'm talking about the topic at hand. It's a trending topic. That's the reason why I'm talking about it. I talk about current events here, Games Over Dims. I don't know if you knew that, but that's what I do. The current event is this. That's why we're talking about it. Tomorrow is going to be a different topic. Carl says, time for good people on both sides to start standing up and pushing back. Yes, some of them will. IT Burnout said, thank you for speaking the truth. You're welcome. We're at 70,000 likes, folks. Can we get to 80, please? Dally MAK, thanks for encouraging people to like. Dad Bod said, in fairness to black people, we have to move in a certain way in order to make white people feel safe and not to label us. Sometimes. It depends on who you are. It depends on how you are moving. And it depends on where you are. All of those things play a role in if what you said is true or not. It's not always true. Just because you're black doesn't mean you got to do something to make a white person feel safe. And how do you even know? How do you even know? It's usually when, in my experience, when a black person is talking like that, you're going off what you think a white person is thinking about you, when the reality is most of the time they ain't thinking about you at all. But you're thinking about what they're thinking, and you're projecting your thoughts onto them and saying, oh, these white people are uncomfortable, or I got to do this to make them feel comfortable. You don't really have to do anything. But if you're preoccupied with it, then that's what happens. Nicole said, why is the term changing now? The right is changing terms used for other meanings like woke. Well, Nicole, I would not give credit to the right or the left for changing a term. It's the zeitgeist. It's everybody using the term. I don't think the right changed terms used for other meanings. There are many terms that are used in multiple ways. Black fatigue is used in many different ways. But I wouldn't put that on one side or the other side. 303 Code Red, good morning. Carla said, I don't even agree with my own self. Yeah, we're at 74,000 likes, folks. Can we get to 80, please? Sappy says, so what's the solution? Who told you there was a solution? There ain't no solution. This is just a situation. So problems have solutions. This is not really a problem. It's a circumstance. The difference between a circumstance and a problem is that a problem has a solution. Circumstances do not. They're just a thing. And you just have to decide how are you going to navigate the circumstance. The weather is a circumstance. It's not a problem because you can't do anything. If it rains, you can't stop it. It's a circumstance. You can change your circumstances by, let's say if it's raining in Miami, you can drive to Orlando. Maybe it's not raining there. But there's no solution. Holy Ghost says, it feels like people are not conscious enough to take accountability. Well, accountability takes effort. And I don't think a lot of people are signing up for effort. And the three truths about human beings is that people don't think, they don't read, and they're lazy. Carla said the silent majority needs to speak up. Well, by definition, they won't. Carla, that's the reason why they're the silent majority. Nicole said to make it something else to argue about. Well, again, I wouldn't put that on any side. A lot of people like coming up with things to argue about because it creates attention, and attention is followed by money. So we can't put that on any side. And people on both sides like making money. Everybody got bills to pay. Carla said, feel emotions, not be led by emotions. That's right. Meme said, you are correct. Yeah, lifeline, phone a friend. That's correct. So where was I? I lost my spot. Holy Ghost said, you can play music without getting copyrighted on TikTok. No, it's not a copyright thing, Holy Ghost. What happens, and it wasn't music either. What it was, and also I'm streaming on YouTube. So if there's any music in the YouTube video, they will shut it down and unmonetize it. It's not about the copyrights, the monetization. And on TikTok, they will give you a warning if you play any type of copyrighted material. I did it. It just happened to me last week. So I know what I'm talking about. When it comes to anything that can get you in trouble on TikTok, trust me, I'm a veteran. I'm highly experienced. But Heck says, hopefully talking about this openly, it will help people judge others by their character. Keep hoping. That's not going to happen. There is a small percentage of people who will be converted, for lack of a better term, but most people, no. Carlos says, Sean Combs. Yeah, I'll be talking about that as we get more info. I need more data before I talk about the Diddy trial. But there are some interesting things that have come out already. So if y'all are not listening to somebody who's talking about the Diddy trial, someone who's up there and in the courtroom, there's a lot of interesting things happening. So there's some YouTube channels like Court TV or something like that. They talk about it. I was listening to Myron Gaines. He was talking about, because he's up there. He was talking about it. So I was listening to it. Oh, so I was on the FYP. Oh, shout out to TikTok. They got me on the FYP already. All right. Some days sometimes I get like 3 or 4 more people in here than what we got today. I didn't know I was on the FYP. Shout out to TikTok. We're at 80,000, folks. Can we get to 90, please? Carlos said, Al Sharpton is the epitome. He's the godfather. He's kind of on his downside now. He's close to rocking chair status, like Jesse Jackson. But there are others who will pop up. It may just be a collective of people. It's kind of like after Michael Jordan left, there wasn't another Jordan, but there's a handful of good people who kind of good by keeping the race hustling up. Whoopi Goldberg gets the Lifetime Hypocrite Award. Yeah, Whoopi Goldberg is funny. But she got to play a role. She's on network TV, so there's a certain role she has to play. Carla said, Jasmine Crockett is a good race hustler. Now, Jasmine Crockett she's a surface level race hustler. She's trying, but she doesn't have enough substance. Al Sharpton could put some meat on the bone of his race hustling. I don't agree with his hustling, but he actually has some meat on the bone. And he does move people to actually do things. Al Sharpton will get you to show up for an event and get you to talk about a certain thing and kind of control a narrative. Al Sharpton actually knows how to do that. He's good at it. Jasmine Crockett does not do that. She's just getting on social media and talking shit, which gets attention, but it's surface level attention. There's no depth to her. Al Sharpton has some depth. Even though he's a race hustler, there's some depth to what he's doing. He actually has a plan and a strategy. Jasmine Crockett does not have that. So I wouldn't put her on that level. So I wouldn't even call her good. She's an amateur race hustler is what I would call her. YOLO Vegas said, man, here has it right. Thank you. Carla says, salute to MLK Jr. and statues of Floyd is ridiculous. Yes, it was always ridiculous. My house said that is the brutal truth. Yes, it is. Dally MAK says some dude on TikTok has a video on black people versus the N-words. Yeah, I'm sure many have done their own versions of it. Counseling Mom said, Trayvon Martin, that's who we should have made a big deal about. In what way? A big deal such as what? According to the documentary called The Trayvon Hoax, he started the fight. So, no, I wouldn't have made a big deal about him. I mean, a big deal was made about him. So I'm actually kind of asking, what are you asking? A big deal was made about him. BLM was launched based on that Trayvon Martin case. Cadet said, let them know, King, you are what you preach. Well, thank you. The Homelander said, I have black fatigue. Well, that's what we've been talking about. Us Negotiator said, holy shit, finally, common sense talking. Thank you. Counseling mom said Martin was a child walking home. No, I wouldn't say that. There's a documentary called The Trayvon Hoax. Counseling mom, I'm assuming you haven't seen it. Go listen to it. And I'm not telling you it's going to convince you. I'm not telling you it's going to change your mind. I doubt it. But I would say go and listen, go and watch it and tell me what you think about it after you've watched it. And just because you're walking home doesn't mean you can't do something wrong. All right, he did something that led to a confrontation and he lost his life in the process. So you get into a confrontation just because you're a child and just because you're walking home does not mean you're innocent. So this is a verbal trick that a lot of people use. They use these terms to make it seem like something is innocent, but these things don't necessarily make you innocent. A child can do the wrong thing, and walking home does not preclude you from doing something dumb. He did something dumb. Chief said the first pick was a black quarterback. Yes, exactly. China said, yes, Deion was. Yeah, exactly. So, again, this is the reason why I don't even understand the kind of stuff that people say on here. Let me see if I can find it this way. I'm still trying to find this photo of Deion Sanders that I know I saved to my phone because I showed it to you all weeks ago when we were having this conversation about the NFL draft, but I cannot find the photo. I don't know what happened to it. It's in here somewhere, but I can't find the photo. Let me go one more thing I can search. No, not in here. No. Nope. Let me look one more thing. Oh, I just saw it. Here it goes. All right. So this is Shedeur Sanders' dad when he got drafted to the NFL. That's Deion. Holloway said, I thought BLM started after George Floyd. No, BLM got super popular after George Floyd. BLM started with Trayvon Martin in 2014. After that case was adjudicated and the guy who took Martin's life was found not guilty, that's when BLM started. So this is Deion Sanders when he got drafted in 1988. So you see he has on all this jewelry, no shirt underneath the jacket, and he's calling himself Primetime. He came to the NFL with a nickname that he had on the jacket, sunglasses on, jewelry on. This is after he got drafted. He was number 5 pick in the draft. Now, why did he go number 5 and his son went the 5th round? Because Deion was better than his son. Deion was 10 times more talented than his son. But Heck said Rasheed Wallace, his performance outweighed his attitude. Well, Rasheed Wallace's attitude was just with the referees. So, like, as a player and teammate, he got respect from the players he played with. It was his reputation because he would get the technical fouls that Rasheed Wallace, his situation. His attitude off the court was it was never a bad thing with him. David said he was prime time and he backed it up. Yes, he did. Carlos said, I remember when Deion was drafted, so cocky but outstanding. Yeah, exactly. Steele, said Jack Tatum paralyzed folks who still liked him. Oh, well. Yeah, we haven't had one yet. No strong man yet today, Carla. Rasheem said, Dre, I can understand black fatigue. What about 400 years of racism fatigue? It's supposed to be uncomfortable. Yeah, well, I brought that up. I brought up the thing people saying, well, what about all these years of people doing bad things? And Mitza Galvez over on Instagram, good morning. And my response to that was, who's 400 years old? You ain't been around for 400 years. So in the time that many of us have been alive, let's just say the last 50 years, things have been pretty open and every black person has had the freedom to do what you want to do and be who you want to be. So that's where I stand on it. Counseling mom said, I can't grab Skittles without losing my life at 7 p.m. Counseling mom, you got to come with more substance than that. Joel said, I'm late to the conversation. What's the debate? It's not really a debate. It's more of a conversation, Joel. The conversation is black fatigue and how people are getting tired of N-words. Let's see. Where are we? I lost my spot again. Carlos said, face facts, racism exists and will. How do you navigate to have a successful life regardless? Yes, and racism is a way of thinking. It's not a behavior. So, again, people run around looking for ways to label things and people as racist. You're wasting your time unless you happen to be a race hustler and that's your business model. But other than that, what are you doing? Marcus said, thank you. Only a black man can say what you said and get away with it. Yes, exactly. It's been my point. And the tide is starting to shift to where white people can say these things and get away with it, but not yet. Matrix says, not my job to make a stranger feel safe. What are you talking about? Sappy said, take what Jesus said. You always have trouble, prejudice, surface feelings, but overcome with love. All right, fair enough. Carlos said, I'm not going to allow what someone else thinks to dictate my life. Well, you don't even, most of the time, not most of the time, all the time, none of us knows what another person is thinking. So there's no way you can allow that because it's not even possible. Spam account said I have white fatigue. All right. Jennifer said, I would like to figure out how to make my HOA self-sustainable. Any suggestions? Jennifer, where'd that question come from? I would need more context. It was also not the topic. Susan said, hi, Mr. Work on Your Game. This is the first time I'm on your live. What's the discussion today? Discussion is black fatigue. This is things that white people and some black people are even saying about how they're getting tired of everything being about race when it comes to black people, certain black people, and what people who are labeled the race hustlers. Last name Charles said George Floyd bought more notoriety to BLM. Yes, exactly. BLM was around in 2014. A lot of people don't know that. And it was in 2020 after the George Floyd, BLM got a whole bunch of more attention than they had been getting. They had been going along quietly and for the most part, generally not being paid attention to. And in 2020, they got a whole bunch of attention and they took in a lot of donation money in the summer of 2020. Candace Owens did an entire documentary. You can find it on the Daily Wire website on BLM. She went and did a deep dive on where that money went. And y'all should go watch the documentary so you can find out where that money went. I'll tell you where it didn't go. It didn't go to black people. That's one thing you should know. Maze Jesse said, I went to Tuscaloosa for graduation, ruined. What does that mean? My house said, lost credibility with Al since the Tawana Bradley fiasco. That was a long time ago. My house, that was in the 80s. Savvy said, thank you for explaining the truth. We need to be honest and accountable. Of course. Dad Gaines said, of course you wouldn't say that. Oh, well, I don't know what you're referring to. Steely Stan said, the more race politics go on, eventually might lead to whites being more tribalized. Well, people are already tribalized. Dad said, also doesn't mean deadly force was authorized. Yes, there's a reason why we have courts. Rasheem said, Zimmerman followed Trayvon home. That is a verified fact. No, it's not. That's a story. Not a verified fact. It's a story. And he didn't lose his life in front of his home. So if you're following somebody home, then that means he made it to his house. He didn't. It was Zimmerman saw Trayvon, and he was trailing behind him, and he was on the phone, and the cop said, leave him alone. And Zimmerman was still following him somewhat. At some point, the cop said, no, let the cops take care of it. Trayvon noticed Zimmerman, and then he engaged him. They had a fight. And according to what he said, Zimmerman said he was losing the fight, so he used his weapon to defend himself, and Trayvon lost his life. And at the end of the day, all that matters is what happened in court. The adjudication was that he is not guilty. And again, watch the documentary called The Trayvon Hoax, and you can learn more about how that case was played out. My house said Deion was always performing off and on the field. Yeah, definitely on the field. Duck on Buck said, where was I yesterday? I got banned on TikTok yesterday. So my ban was still in place at the time that I normally go live. So I couldn't go live yesterday because I was temporarily banned. Georgia, good morning. Hayes said, do you support Christian nationalism? Well, if somebody is a Christian, they have every right to be. I don't know what you mean by support. If someone's a Christian, they have a right to be. And if someone's a nationalist, why wouldn't you be a nationalist? Everybody should be a nationalist of the country they live in. How you living in a nation and you don't like it? So I guess I'm a nationalist too. I'm a nationalist. I like America. Does that make me a nationalist? What is a national? What does that even mean? I get Christian, but what is a nationalist? Georgia said, you was not on yesterday. Yes, because I was banned on TikTok yesterday and waiting for that ban to get removed took up the time that this live normally happened. So that's what happened yesterday. Giraffe said, that's a solid rebuttal. Who's 400 years old? I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not, but thank you. Shy Guy said, why does truth and facts have to have a race requirement? They don't. Is that people throw out the word truth and facts as if that means that's the end of the discussion when it's actually the beginning of the discussion. And facts don't matter anymore anyway. I explained this to you all several days ago. And those of you who were here when I talked about it, didn't I tell you I would have to say this 1,000 more times in the future? Facts don't matter. So people often throw out something as a fact as if that means there's nothing else that can be said on the subject. That's false. Facts don't matter anymore. What matters is persuasion and influence, which often can involve facts, but they don't have to. Carl said in the 80s, Alan Jesse had churches, made food, handed out to people at their meetings. Yeah, they used to be active in the streets. And Jesse Jackson even ran for president. He was that prominent. Man Band said, where you get that tie? From a department store. Let's see. We had 100,000 likes. Thank you, everybody, for the 100,000 likes. We did great today. I got to the bottom of the comments, so I'll wait a minute, see if anybody else has a question or comment. I will tell you what we are planning on for tomorrow. Planning on. This may be the topic. It may not be the topic. So we just did black fatigue. We got to talk about this Donald Trump plane. You heard about this airplane Donald Trump is getting from Qatar? Qatar. So he's getting this plane to cost $700 million. $700 million. We're going to talk about that plane. That's coming up. We're going to talk about these refugees who came from South Africa into the United States. And a lot of people are like, wait a minute, how are people happy about these refugees, but people didn't like the other refugees that Trump was talking about, eating the cats, eating the dogs. We're going to talk about Trump is allegedly going to lower prices of pharmaceuticals, like legal pharmaceuticals. He's working to lower those prices, and that would be a big deal. That Bernie Sanders allegedly might actually agree with Donald Trump publicly. So that would be interesting. That's coming up. We're going to talk about this greedflation thing that I was planning on talking about, but that got pushed down because other things came up. And we'll probably talk about the Diddy trial at some point, but I need more. I need to see, everybody got to be cross-examined before I talk about the Diddy trial. So we can't just go with one side of the conversation. Because one side is the government brings their witness, like Diddy's ex-girlfriend, and they basically ask her a bunch of questions that makes Diddy look like a monster. Then the cross-examination is when they come up and they basically destroy her credibility. So that got to happen before we talk about anything. I need to hear both sides of it. I need to see her face both sides of the firing squad before I make any comments on the Diddy case. And that case is going to take a while. I think there's a lot of witnesses. Giraffe student athlete says the people that are experiencing black fatigue are the ones aren't monetizing it. Those who do are eating this mess up sadly. Yeah, so they find a way. I mean, that's what hustling is. That's what hustling is. They find a way to get something out of it. So over there on YouTube, said black man is fair. So who is the leader or dictator of the black community? I don't think anyone. I don't think there's one leader that we all recognize. Said, aren't degenerates part of our family? And do we call them names? I will. If there's a degenerate in my family, I'm gonna tell them they're a degenerate, and you better get your shit together. Get the hell out of here. I will. Black man said, we can't get anywhere through criticism. We can only agree to come together. I disagree. We can get a lot of places through criticism. Steven said, I thought it was 400 million. Whatever it is a lot of money. Let's just say that. Whatever it costs. Giraffe said, it wasn't sarcasm. I was compliment the argument of who's 400 years old. Okay, I thought it was a great point. Great live once again, Jerry. Thank you. So Brett on TikTok says a nationalist is someone who vigorously supports their nation's interests, but to the exclusion and detriment of other nations, unlike a patriot who just supports their nation but is inclusionary. Okay, so I didn't know that definition. Thinking about that one, I'd say this. I don't mind somebody being a nationalist because Donald Trump's whole campaign is what? America first. Isn't that what he came out on? America first. He said, we're going to put America first. We're going to stop. We're going to get out of all these bad trade deals that we have with other countries, which is, I guess, a nationalist way of thinking about things. If that's nationalist, I'm good with it. We're going to get out of these bad trade deals. We're going to start charging other countries the way that they charge us. He was doing that as a threatening tactic to get them to actually get on the same page. Lower what you're charging us so that we will not start charging you. We just wanted to be fair. And we're going to close our borders and enforce our immigration laws so that we can support the people who are actually here and our citizens rather than bringing so many other people from out of here into here so much. And if all of these are nationalist talking points, then I don't have a problem with them. What's wrong with that? Every other country does it. Is any other country out there prioritizing the United States? So why do we have to prioritize them? Now, I know there's a whole lot of details that can go into this conversation. I've already talked about this, by the way. Those of you who are new around here, haven't heard me speak before, I've been doing these live streams Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern since last August. And we started doing pretty much current events since last September. So I've been talking about these things. I've been talking about everything Trump, anything you can say about everything that's been news about Trump, I have done a live stream about it. You can find the replays on YouTube, and especially early in this second administration, I was talking about Trump stuff all the time. And we will be coming back to Trump. I told you we're going to talk about this plane. Right now, the pending topic for tomorrow is that airplane that Donald Trump is receiving, or not Donald Trump is receiving, but the government is receiving from the country of Qatar. And there's some things that people don't quite understand about that plane that I'm going to explain tomorrow, if we talk about that tomorrow, if that's the topic. But something else might happen that pushes that off the front page. So that's the pending topic for tomorrow, is the Donald Trump plane. But if something else happens between today and tomorrow, then that'll be the topic. So don't hold me to that one. Duck Going Buck said, hey, you've been keeping up with the playoffs. Yes, I have. The basketball playoffs. Marky Man, appreciate you. We're not going past 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern, by the way, for anybody wondering how long I go here. It's 9:45 a.m., so we have no more than 15 more minutes, if I take that long. R Philly Inc. said, how about the Trump new plane Trojan horse? Trojan horse for what? Macy Jesse said, can we add the extra target of people with disabilities having an additional target on their back? What do you mean? I don't know what that refers to. Carlos said, over 100K. Yay. Yes, we got over 100K. Thank you, everybody, for the 100K. Macy said, I can talk aviation facts. Well, the conversation is not about aviation. The Donald Trump airplane thing is not about aviation or the actual maneuvering of the plane. That's far furthest from the point. The point is about Donald Trump getting that plane, who he got it from, how much it costs. Is it a gift? Is it not a gift? Does it go against the law? And et cetera, et cetera. It has nothing to do with the actual flying of the plane. Carl said, do not use that plane. The plane looks beautiful. Did y'all see pictures of the plane? Let me see if I can find pictures of that plane. I don't know if the plane is completed yet. I think they're still working on it. QATAR. Yeah, we want to see this plane that they're going to gift to Donald Trump. And somebody I see some AI images of the plane, but I want to see the actual images. Someone had shown, I had seen some pictures of the plane, but I don't see it now. Let's see if I can find it. Qatar jet. Yes, that search photos. Now when I'm looking this up, I'm only seeing pictures of. So, all right. So this person named MAGA Cult Slayer said Qatar gifted Trump a $500,000. So here's another number, 500. So it's a whole bunch of money. Let's just say a plane that costs a whole bunch of money. All right, whatever the number is irrelevant. So they gifted him a jet, gold-plated jet, allegedly. And some people are calling it a bribe, of course. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, I don't know if this is the actual plane. This looks like, some people have some pictures on it. I don't think this is the actual plane. It looks like some AI created thing to kind of make it look terrible. But I'm trying to find a picture of what the plane is supposed to actually look like, and I don't see it. But that's okay. Y'all can find it on your own time. Y'all can search the internet. Y'all know how to use phones. So let me see what else we got here. Carlos said it's gorgeous, but don't use it. Why not? Steel Down said, I don't believe he can even accept if he wanted to. I think he can, and I think he will. And he talked about that. I'll get to that. I already got the points laid out for that subject. It's just a matter of which day we're going to talk about it. But that one will be addressed, what you just said. Rahek said they're gifting it to the country like France gifted the Statue of Liberty. Yeah, so there becomes this gray area debate, or some people have one point, other people have the other point, and et cetera, et cetera. Macy said, I understand the nuances of what you're saying. I can speak aviation facts and me being big. Got it. Marcus said, what basketball book is that? Where you see a basketball book? This book right here, that's my book. It's called Work on Your Game. I wrote a book called Work on Your Game. This is the Mandarin version. So this book got translated into Mandarin. So you know how you write a book and sometimes they translate it into other languages. This is this book right here, the English version, translated into Mandarin. And then I just got my publisher to send me the Mandarin version of the book. So as you can see, this is actually written in Mandarin. So I can't read this. But if you were to go over to a country where Mandarin is spoken, you can buy this book in the bookstores. Probably not in America. And it reads like it opens from this side. So most books open from the other side. It opens from this side. So this is the Mandarin version of my book. Carlos said, I see backdoors in every computer system in that plane, major security concerns. Yeah, that's what some people are saying. I was listening to Megan Kelly's show from a couple of days ago, and she was saying that they gotta, of course, the Secret Service got to go through the whole plane and make sure everything's on the up and up. So all that said, folks, tomorrow we'll be back here 8 a.m. Eastern is the time of my live streams. 8 a.m. Eastern. I'm going to be editing and putting up a link on my profile on TikTok, and it'll be inside of the metadata for all these platforms for a place that all of you can go when you watch my live streams that will give you links to all the stuff that I mentioned and ways to get on my email list, ways to get into my chatbot called DreGPT. And I'll be giving all of that. I'll be putting all of that on one web page, and I'll have put that link in my TikTok as of tomorrow. It'll be there because we're going to work on that as soon as I get done here today. That's what I'm going to be working on after I eat lunch. But I do these live streams Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you don't see me here, it's because I probably got suspended or banned off TikTok again, or there was some act of God / life emergency, or I'm traveling. And in those cases, I'll tell you the day before that I'm not going to be live. So usually I'm Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. And if you don't see me here, then one of those three things happen. All that being said, folks, make sure you are following me on Instagram. My Instagram link is in my profile on TikTok. It's I don't know if it's in my Rumble or YouTube, but y'all can find me. Just look my name up. My name is Dre, D-R-E. My last name is Baldwin. Also, what's the other thing? YouTube is where my replays are, or Rumble. So on YouTube and Rumble, you can find the replays of any of my live streams. Is where you can find the replay. And what else is there? Oh, DreGPT. Y'all want to get access to my chatbot? Go to dreallday.com/AI. dreallday.com/AI. That's how you can access my chatbot called DreGPT. We are about to make that a paid offer. Right now, you can access it for free, but I'm telling you right now, we're about to put that behind a paywall. It's not going to be a ton of money. It's going to be less than a couple of Starbucks, but it is going to be paid. I would suggest you access it for free right now before we change that. That's dreallday.com/AI. I will see you all tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern. Work on your game. We are out of here.